much cheaper and more efficient to lease it out and have it be a sort of private area, etc., etc. You know what I mean? I think it's and where it has commonalities to me is what Grazia is showing here, is that we're basically opening the discussion to all these areas where the state is not primarily involved.
Yeah.
And there you're right. I mean, it's for a lot of issues, it's the same problems or the same opportunities, whether it's a community or a private landowner.
But it's not the same governance.
The fact is that they're not
the same governance.
No, but the fact is that they're outside of the official systems. They could be incorporated or not. You could just leave them alone. They will have their specificities in terms of how they will work. But I guess the distinction to me is more of a descriptor than to qualify and to say it's got to stay the way it is.
So if we look in the landscape, let me invite you to have as a reference point the definition of conservation of the World Conservation Strategy of 1980, which I think has been unsurpassed in terms of the roundness of its understanding of what conservation is, and was actually the end point of a long series of consensus exercises. Conservation is a positive phenomenon, embracing human-originated protection, which could have very many different governance types, maintenance, sustainable use, restoration, which is going to be increasingly enormously important in our world under climate change and many other destructive changes that are happening, and enhancement of the natural environment. Now, if you look with this conservation definition in the back of your mind, if you look at the landscape, you find a variety of area-based phenomena. This is the terminology used by the CBD now that we really need to have in our mind, that contribute to conservation. You have indeed protected areas, and I'm using the definition of IUCN in my mind, and here you have in the deeper green two hypothetical examples. You have a national park with the national administration, and you have a municipal park with local administration. But also you have other effective area-based conservation measures, which is a key terminology of CBD in Aichi Target 11, which are here depicted in lighter green, with very different governance types. This is a military no-go zone, which is being conserved because nobody can go there. It is conserved de facto by the government, but is not dedicated to conservation. Thereby, it's not defined as a protected area, but it contributes to conservation. Then you have a private reserve that may very well be because a person has a fantastic wood on the back of its villa, and it's just great. It contributes as a stepping stones to the conservation of birds. It is not dedicated to conservation, or it might be dedicated to conservation, but it is de facto contributing. And there is then, hypothetically again, a community conserved area, which is an area where people have maybe done quite a bit of sustainable use of certain resources through time, but have also maintained the collective characters. I mean, I wish I could show you, if you want, I will show it during lunch, or when we come back from lunch, a variety of pictures of community conserved areas throughout the world, just to show the variety of ecosystems and features that can be taken in this way. So if you also look at the fact that I have tried to choose a grayish and grainy background, is also to say that there are not only area-based phenomena contributing to conservation. There are a variety of situations in the broader landscape that do very much contribute, only they are not broadly area-based. So the picture of conservation, again, is very complex, very rich, very interesting, and we need to understand it in that complexity if we want to do conservation. If we want to be active, if we want to be successful, we need to understand all these phenomena together. And then I'm going to finish with this question for you. do you know any example of other effective area-based conservation measure? Please.
I referred to this on Thursday, guys, if you were there. Our statutory framework makes provision for a whole series of stewardship options, and the lower tiers of those stewardship options are not formal protected areas. That potential to progress through the stewardship options to the top levels, which have statutory status. The lower ones are simply subject to informal conservation agreements between the conservation authorities and the landowners.
So still, how would you describe those? Those are sort of shared governance, other effective area-based conservation measures, right? Because
I don't like boxing things.
But who decides about that?
Well, there are a whole series of factors which will impact on the negotiation of that agreement.
Yeah.
And the three key factors would be who holds tenure.
Yeah.
Where did the management authority comes from? That's another key factor in determining authority.
Whoa, wait. What is this? What you're just talking about? What is the management authority?
When I talk about management authority, that agreement may vest the authority to manage the area in the private landowner or in the community who's entered into that agreement.
Okay.
So even if there's potential for a landowner who doesn't wish to manage that land, for that management to be contracted to another party, potentially another landowner, another entity.
So who are the actors there? There is a
That's what I said,
provincial government?
There will be provincial government, there may be a landowner, there may be an NGO, there may be a community
There may be, but for a specific area. For a specific area. I don't want to have a general
I'll talk about one specific area. So let's talk about in the context of the Cederberg, there will be a private landowner who does not wish to contract the land into a formal protected area. They will contract it into an informal type of stewardship options through a conservation management agreement. That doesn't have a statutory status. It's simply
with management?
With a provincial conservation agency.
So landowner, provincial conservation agency, management agreement. I would call it a shared governance situation. Okay. Any other example? Yes.
It's more of a question, really. Under a lot of the payments for ecosystem services opportunities that are emerging, most notably the carbon offsets and investments in reforestation or what have you, are those new area-based conservation measures? I suspect they are, and I suspect that they're going to become much more significant over the next few years. 6 years we start looking at water, payments for water and payments for biodiversity if we ever get there. At which point the face of conservation, as we know it, might change a little bit.
Yeah, if you want my answer on this one, I think these are instruments that can be applied in terms of governance. Yeah, you can pass it on, but they are not governance types. There are instruments that can apply to any of the governance types. You can have them for governed protected areas, you can have them for private, you can have them for community or for shared governance. They can apply independently to each and every one of them. You raise your hand?
Yeah.
Just, we do have to go into the group work, so I'll pick one.
I was thinking about the military zones.
Yeah. Yes, let's go to group work. Military zones.
Military zones. National defense.
Yes, that would be an example of other effective area-based conservation measure that we just see. So that was short enough. There was one person wanting to speak here. Yeah, Giovanni?
Here is a territory in which two governing systems exist. One is the municipality or the local government unit under the state system, and the other, ATAPAI, which is a traditional governing system. Of the uses of the natural resources, it's the traditional governing system that has the upper hand. And it is the decisions made there is not supplanted in the sense that because the members of the traditional governing systems are also the same members and the same officials of the formal governing systems. So what happened here is that the formal governing system was instead indigenized, instead of supplanting the decisions made by the traditional governing council. And that is one model in which we say that the ICCA, the conservation area decision-making process of traditional governing systems has won over the formal governing system.
So you would say that an example of other effective area-based conservation measure is an area conserved by its traditional governing systems that today gets embraced also by the municipality.
And it was adopted by the municipality.
But the traditional doesn't want to be recognized as a protected area because maybe it's afraid to lose part of its governing strength. And so it says we want to be recognized as conserved, but not as protected under the framework as defined by others. Okay. I think Barbara is going to kill me.
So take the blame.
Yeah.
Take the blame and cut you off. We have an all afternoon. I think we'll have plenty of time to discuss further issues also. It's now
I wanted to go into history and political ecology, but forget it.
Which, by the way, I mean, all these presentations are going to be uploaded to the Congress system, and you'll be able to download them. So whatever is still on there that we haven't been able to go through, you can actually look at it. And I think the history slides are pretty self-explanatory. So it would be, I think, interesting for you to have a look. It's now shortly after 12:30. We have to break for lunch at 1 because the food will be ready up there. But we do want to give you, I think, a little bit of time to do the group work. So we'll ask you to start now and give you a bit of time after lunch to wrap it up. I'm going to distribute these little instructions in a minute, but the principle is very basic. We would ask you at each table group to identify one protected area that one of the people at the table knows pretty well. You could use the examples you used this morning. If you would like to choose another one, choose another one. But it would be good if somebody could volunteer an example that they know relatively well. And then we would like to ask you to do a little bit this exercise of unpacking governance, as Grazia mentioned there. So to look a little bit at who established this protected area, when, how, who are the key rights holders, stakeholders in the context of this area. And then identify one major decision that has been taken in that protected area at some point, or that has to be taken in the future. And then think through who took that decision. Think about what is the decision-making structure of the area and who actually took that particular decision. And then see are there different levels of decision-making in that protected area. And look also, maybe think a little bit through also what are the kind of instruments and powers that we use. So basically what we're asking you to do is to describe a little bit the governance arrangement of that protected area. And then when you've discussed this and described it a little bit, try to see into which box of the matrix it would fit. Just try it. And if you're really unclear and you say it could be 3 things, then that's fine too. But try and see. And so we're gonna, after lunch, we'll have the matrix up on the wall, and we'll also have this continuum up on the wall. And we'll ask you to place your protected area on the matrix, but also on the continuum. Is that more or less clear? Okay, good. There's a last question on here, which I think we're going to leave out because it would take a little bit of time, is to think into what's the situation now with the governance type and what would be a better governance type for my protected area. Whether it's appropriate, whether the governance type is appropriate, and whether you will see ways of improving it, which is a really interesting discussion, but I think it might take a little bit of time. So just see how far you can get in terms of describing the protected area. After lunch, please identify one rapporteur of your group. After lunch, what we're going to ask each group to do, the representative of each group to do, is to come up, place the protected area on the matrix and the continuum, and give us a 5-minute sort of resume of what you've discussed on the team. Just 5 minutes. You don't need to do slides and flip charts or anything, just take a bit of notes and describe it to us. And we'd ask you in the group to come up with a symbol that represents your protected area. Draw it on one of the little cards and we'll provide those to you. And then stick it up when you come up to place the protected area and tell us why you chose that symbol for your protected area. It could be a species, could be a feature, it could be something symbolizing the way things are happening in this area. So I'm going to distribute these, ask you to start, and then at 1 we'll break for lunch, and you'll have a bit of time when we come back to finish the discussion. Any questions, anything unclear? I don't have one sheet for everyone, so I'm just going to leave 2 or 3 per table. Actually, the 2 tables in the back, could I ask you to merge so that we have one less people? I think it's quite a few people, so if you could just maybe get together.
What they have done is living on the periphery of National Park. It's come up with responsibility category 6, and that is where people are living on the they have access to the sources. After the category area. So we have National Park, and 4 area. We have local people and the representatives working with our for and now the question because it's strictly managed national park for visitors, for wildlife. It's the government administration area authority. So first the corporate area was established by the government. Then they realized it needs a local people. So it's the government induced approach, but consulting with the local people. But it was initiated by the government. Also, it's the community-based approach managing the area, but it was initiated by the government. But I would call it community-based approach.